Hey everybody, welcome into a Flyers game preview. I'm Kevin Durso. Tonight the Flyers are back on home ice to face the Boston Bruins at 8 p.m. Before getting started, this video is brought to you as part of Flyers coverage on sportstalkphilly.com and the YWT podcast. Get all of your Flyers coverage at sportstalkphilly.com. Follow me on Twitter at Kevin_Durso and find more coverage from me over at 973ESPN.com. And be sure to listen and subscribe to the YWT podcast. Really quickly, before I get into some details on tonight's game, I just wanted to take a moment to address my absence, both from doing the pregame videos and appearing on last week's YWT podcast. I was dealing with a family situation that required me to be away from my little home studio here that I've created. And it didn't really provide me with, the time to appear on the show on Sunday or the equipment to make the quality of game preview videos that you deserve to see. All is well. I'm obviously back here in my home studio now and looking forward to the week that is ahead for this team. So let's get into it. Tonight, Flyers, Bruins, and it's a rematch of a couple of games from a couple of weeks ago. And obviously, those games did not go well for the Flyers when they happened. That was a Thursday-Saturday combo. The Thursday game started off pretty well. The Flyers are up 2-0 through two periods. It looks like they're in position to find a way to win that game, potentially, with a good third period. And they gave up 4 third-period goals. They had to rally back from being down 4-3 to get the game to overtime, eventually a shootout. The Bruins win the game. Not really that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things when you start to think about it. It was the first time they had gone to overtime all season. It was just the second game they had lost out of 5, and they'd had points in 4 out of 5. Not that big of a deal to lose a game to a team like Boston. Disappointing that you gave up 4 goals in the third period, but it's one game, and the Saturday game totally changed the perspective when they came out and did not play well from the beginning, basically just got blown out completely. And for a while, it was a close competitive game. Yes, the Bruins are on the board pretty early in that game, and they're continuing to do some things well, but it's realistically a 2-1 game for a majority of the game towards the late stages of the second period. That third goal late in the second period really did the Flyers in. And then the third period, it was no turning back for Boston. They were in control. They took full advantage of what was going on in that game, and it led to a lot of frustration. And it was just 6 games into the season. Since that game, though, the Flyers have come back and found a way to win. I would not sit here and tell you that these are convincing wins by any stretch. I would not tell you that this team is playing to their full potential or where they think they should be. But they are winning games. They are coming into this game on a 4-game winning streak. They are coming in after defeating the New York Islanders, the team that knocked them out of the playoffs in September, with 2 overtime wins in a row against that team. That is significant for this team's confidence and the ability to feel like they are in every game, that they can find a way to win every game, and to feel like they're getting a lot of things going their way right now. The way they're playing is not sustainable. They're going to need to continue to get better. I think that these 2 games against the Islanders started to show signs of that. They were playing well for parts of those games, and they were doing things that made them a dominant team. They've got to continue to do those things throughout these 2 games coming up against Boston, but starting with tonight's, and really see what they can get from there. If you can just build on a couple of areas, continue to have success, more of the other areas that aren't coming around will eventually start to come around. And that's what this team needs to do. They need to continue to improve in these areas and show what kind of team they can be. And this, to me, is a huge measuring stick week for this team. They need to be as solid as they can be against Boston, who continues to do things very well. They've won 5 of 6. They're not coming in cold either. They've also got a key player back that I'll talk about in a moment, because he's going to be one of my players to watch tonight. And this is a team that is going to test you throughout the year. This is a team that later this month, you're going to play them in an outdoor game. It's going to kind of renew some of that rivalry to an extent. And it just really is going to allow for this whole thing to just continue to build in that direction. In addition, when you follow this 2-game series against Boston, you're going to play the team that's also right at the top of the standings in Washington, a team that up until playing Boston recently did not have a regulation loss yet this season. These 2 teams are probably the benchmark for you right now. You're right there with them. You're tied for the division lead in points with Washington. Boston's 1 game behind with 1 extra game still to play. There's a lot of things to come from this. There's a lot of things that you need to take from these 4 games coming up, starting with this one tonight, to see where you are compared to at least the top 2 in this division. Everybody else you've played, everybody else you've found a way to defeat in some way, shape, or form, with the exception of the New York Rangers, who they have not played yet this season. You found a way to play games against Pittsburgh and win. You found a way to beat New Jersey, to beat Buffalo, to beat the Islanders. You need to find a way to beat, and the Rangers are closer to the bottom. I think that that's a team that ultimately down the stretch, as they continue to get better, as they continue to improve off of certain things, that they will be able to beat as well. It's Boston that they haven't been able to defeat yet. It's Washington they haven't even matched up against yet. Those are the two teams to me that they need to show what they're capable of to set the tone for the rest of the season at this point. You will be at the quarter mark when you finish this 4-game stretch. It'll be 14 games out of 56. That's the quarter mark. You will more than likely be in a playoff spot, especially if you have some form of success this week, even if it's just 2 wins. But it would really say a lot if you came out and found a way to win 2 of them, get a point in another, maybe even win 3 of them, and do something really significant with this time. And this is where this team has to start to move in this direction, to start showing where they are. Chuck Fletcher said it on Tuesday, and Alain Vigneault has echoed it throughout the season. This is what they expect of this team. They want to see more from this team. They've continued to make some slight changes, but ultimately, this is the group you're riding it out with, and nothing is really going to change about that. So you need to continue to be better and continue to be the team that people expect you to be. Let's go into the goalie matchup to start with, and we have pretty obvious matchup here. It's the matchup that was led off this series when these two teams met for the first time this season. Carter Hart in goal for the Flyers. He's really bounced back well in the last 2 starts. He's allowed a combined 3 goals in those 2 starts. His numbers have improved drastically as a result of that. He's gotten 2 more wins in the standings to improve his record as well. So he's done a lot of things successfully. He really looked dialed in those games against New Jersey and the Islanders. So I really think that that's going to be significant for him to continue to build his confidence and really do it against a team where the last time he played them, the frustration really came out. On the other side, Tuukka Rask in goal for Boston, and again, not really a surprise. The guy's got outstanding numbers in his career against the Flyers. He's off to a really strong start here. That goals against number and the save percentage probably is a little deceiving. He's been on the hook for some rough games when you think about maybe one of his wins being the shootout win against the Flyers, where he still allowed 4 goals in that game. The overtime loss coming against Washington, again, a game where you allow 4 goals. It's not perfect from him, but he's been good enough for sure. And they've got another guy right behind him in Yaroslav Halak, who's capable. I'm really curious to see what they do with the goaltending situation, and we'll see more about this as it gets to Friday's game, because Bruce Cassidy said there was a possibility that Rask could even start both games in Philadelphia, given his success. That was when they still knew they had 2 other games coming up over the weekend that they could pass to Halak. Now those games are postponed as a result of some of the COVID things going on with other teams in the division, New Jersey and Buffalo specifically. So I wouldn't be surprised if Rask doesn't start the Friday game now, so they give Halak some work, knowing they're going to be off for a couple of games here and have a little bit of a gap in the schedule. So that's my best guess for that, but it's no surprise to see these two headlining everything to start with as the season gets underway. Let's move on to the players to watch. And for the Flyers, James Van Riemsdyk has been on quite a roll. He's off to one of the best starts of his career at this point. 13 points in 10 games is outstanding for him. And you look at the last 5 games and you really can see how he's performed. The 2 goals, but really the 6 assists. He's setting up a lot of goals here. And I think about, he set up Kevin Hayes' goal in Saturday's game that gave him one of those assists. He had a 4-assist game, setting up all 3 of Joel Farabee's goals, and then being part of the power play that gave Kevin Hayes the game winner later in that one as well in overtime. So 5 of his 6 assists in the last 5 games have come over the last 2. And don't forget, he obviously had a 2-goal game thrown in there against New Jersey earlier in the week too. So he's had multi-point games multiple times this week, and it's really showing how great he's been for this team so far. And he has been stepping up in such a big way. He's one of those veteran players that you need to be on his game constantly from the beginning, and he has been. And on the other side, this is the player I was alluding to earlier, David Pastner, not coming back for Boston. He's only been back for 2 games, and already he's piling up some big numbers, 2 goals, 1 assist in 2 games. There's more to come from him. And now that he's back with the usual line mates, with Patrice Bergeron, with Brad Marchand, these guys who are going to be able to contribute in such a way, because they are such a powerful line. They can attack you from all angles, from all situations. They can score in a variety of ways. And Pasternak's right in the middle of that usually, especially as the guy with probably the better, the best shot out of the 3, and the guy who really just demonstrates all of those offensive skills so well. He's a piece that just wasn't part of this puzzle when the Flyers played in Boston a couple weeks ago. and they had enough trouble stopping the offensive side for the Bruins in those 2 games. I mean, Boston had come in, I believe they had 3 goals in 3 games to that point, and they scored 10 in a matter of 4 periods, essentially going from the third period of that Thursday game through the entire Saturday game, where they won 6-1. So to get 10 goals in 4 periods shows the power they have even without him in the lineup. Now add him to the lineup. And granted, Boston's missing a couple of other guys that played in those 2 games, that contributed in those 2 games, that will not play in these games. Jake DeBrusk is out with an injury. Jack Studnicka is out with an injury. Those are guys who did contribute in those games, but this is one of your big guys at this point. This is one of your top dogs at this point, playing on the top line and on a powerful line with 2 other superstar players as well. So you've got to be mindful of him at all times, and that's really going to set the stage for how the Flyers approach this team, because if they can keep that line at bay, it's going to require the depth of the Bruins to beat you, and that can be a lot more favorable when you have a lot of your depth going, when you're getting contributions from across the board in a lot of areas, and the Flyers have been over the course of several games this season where they're getting the performance that they want from other players on lower lines and still finding a way to win these games. That's going to be the real key to this one, is stopping that top line, Pastner being a primary part of it, and getting the production that you need from the other end as well. So that is going to do it for this Flyers game preview. Check back here after the game. Kyle Collington will have a post-game video for you. I will be back with you before the next game on Friday night when the Flyers face the Bruins again. Until then, you can catch up with the latest episode of the YWT podcast. Once again, be sure to subscribe to the YWT podcast on YouTube to be notified of all of our game previews and game recaps. Be sure to follow along during tonight's game. I'll have coverage on Twitter at Kevin_Durso. Game updates are over at Flyer-Delphia on Twitter. You can check out my game preview before the game and the post-game recap and 5 takeaways over at sportstalkphilly.com and 97.3 ESPN.com after the game. With that, enjoy the game, everyone, and we'll see you next time for the next Flyers game preview.